Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact,
Yeah.
a pact that on its surface was a non-aggression pact between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union.
Right, but underneath that public facade was a secret protocol that would end up reshaping the map of Eastern Europe and set the stage for World War II.
Absolutely, and to fully grasp its significance, we need to consider the kind of turbulent landscape of Europe in the years following World War I.
Yeah, Europe was grappling with the aftermath of a devastating war.
Right.
The Treaty of Versailles, while intended to create a lasting peace, instead fueled resentment and instability, particularly in Germany.
Yeah, the treaty imposed these harsh reparations on Germany, crippling its economy
Right.
and creating a deep sense of national humiliation.
And that discontent created fertile ground for extremist ideologies to take root and flourish, including the Nazi Party.
Yeah, the Nazi Party, led by Adolf Hitler, exploited this atmosphere of anger and desperation,
Yeah.
promising to restore Germany's greatness and overturn the perceived injustices of the Versailles Treaty, appealing to a population that was eager for change and a return to national pride.
Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, under the leadership of Joseph Stalin, was also undergoing a period of dramatic transformation.
Yeah,
Stalin was focused on strengthening the Soviet Union both militarily and industrially, seeking to modernize its armed forces and expand its territory.
so you have a wounded Germany seeking to reassert itself on the world stage, and a rapidly industrializing Soviet Union with its own expansionist ambitions.
Yeah.
This sets the stage for the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a pact that would have profound implications for both nations and for the future of Europe.
Yeah, the pact itself had two distinct faces.
Right.
The public face was a commitment to non-aggression, a seemingly straightforward agreement between two nations pledging to avoid conflict.
Right.
But the true nature of the pact lay in its secret protocol, a clandestine agreement that would have devastating consequences.
Yeah, this secret protocol hidden from the world at the time essentially divided Eastern Europe into spheres of influence for Germany and the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
It's this secret agreement that truly reveals the pact's sinister nature.
The protocol allocated specific territories to each nation. Eastern Poland, the Baltic states, and parts of Romania were designated as falling under Soviet influence.
Uh-huh.
While Western Poland was marked for German expansion, this clandestine carve-up of Eastern Europe set the stage for the invasion and partition of Poland, a key event that would trigger the outbreak of World War II.
This duality, a public display of peace masking a secret agreement for territorial division, is crucial to understanding the pact and its implications.
Right.
It exemplifies the complex and often deceptive nature of international diplomacy, especially during times of heightened tension and geopolitical maneuvering.
To understand why Germany and the Soviet Union entered into this pact, we need to delve into their distinct motivations and calculations.
Of course.
It was a convergence of strategic interests despite their diametrically opposed ideologies.
For Hitler and Nazi Germany, the pact served several strategic purposes. It neutralized a potential threat on Germany's eastern border, allowing Hitler to focus his military ambitions westward towards France and other European nations.
Right.
It also granted Germany access to valuable resources, particularly in eastern Poland and the Baltic states, which would fuel its war machine.
From Stalin's perspective, the pact provided the Soviet Union with valuable time to rebuild and modernize its military, which had been weakened by internal purges and was not yet prepared for a major conflict.
Okay.
Additionally, the pact allowed Stalin to expand Soviet territory westward, reclaiming lands lost after World War I and establishing what he perceived as a crucial buffer zone against potential future aggression from Germany or other Western powers.
The motivations on both sides were rooted in a political philosophy known as realpolitik.
Yeah.
This approach to international relations prioritizes pragmatic self-interest and power politics above ideological considerations or moral principles.
Right.
The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is a textbook example of realpolitik in action, two ideologically opposed nations setting aside their differences for strategic gain.
However, it's crucial to recognize that while the pact served the short-term interests of both Germany and the Soviet Union, it was ultimately built on a foundation of deceit and opportunism. This inherent instability would ultimately contribute to the pact's unraveling and the outbreak of war between the two signatories.
The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact had an immediate and catastrophic impact on the outbreak of World War II. The coordinated invasion of Poland in September 1939, with Germany attacking from the west and the Soviet Union from the east, effectively partitioning the nation as agreed upon in the secret protocol.
This aggression against Poland, a nation that had received guarantees of support from Britain and France, forced those Western powers to declare war on Germany, thus marking the official beginning of World War II. The pact was the match that lit the fuse of a global conflict, a conflict that would claim millions of lives and reshape the geopolitical order of the world.
The ramifications of this pact extended far beyond its role in igniting World War II. It also had a lasting impact on the post-war world, shaping the borders and national identities of Eastern Europe for decades to come.
The territorial divisions laid out in the secret protocol directly influenced the redrawing of borders after the war, resulting in enduring disputes and shaping the geopolitical landscape for decades. For example, the annexation of the Baltic states into the Soviet Union remains a point of contention even today.
This leads us to a critical point in our understanding of the Pact's legacy, the expansion of Soviet influence throughout Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
The Pact, along with the outcome of World War II, facilitated the establishment of communist regimes in Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and other Eastern European nations, resulting in profound political and social consequences for those countries.
The revelation of the secret protocol, which came to light after the war, also had a significant impact on the burgeoning Cold War. It solidified distrust between the Soviet Union and Western powers, further deepening the ideological divide and contributing to the decades-long geopolitical rivalry that characterized the latter half of the 20th century.
But beyond the geopolitical ramifications, it's critical to examine the human cost of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. The agreement had a devastating impact on the lives of millions of people living in the affected territories, leading to mass displacement, political repression, and enduring trauma.
The redrawing of borders resulted in the forced displacement of millions, with people being uprooted from their homes and communities, often with little warning or support. Ethnic minorities, particularly Jews and Poles, faced persecution and violence as they were caught between hostile regimes.
Both Nazi and Soviet administrations imposed harsh measures to control the populations in the occupied territories. Freedom of speech was suppressed, dissent was brutally crushed, and individual liberties were severely curtailed. The pact led to an era of fear, uncertainty, and suffering for those living under its shadow.
The pact's legacy continues to resonate in Eastern Europe today. The memory of the pact serves as a reminder of vulnerability and a driving force in ongoing struggles for national identity and sovereignty, particularly in Poland and the Baltic states, which experienced the most direct consequences of the agreement. The pact's legacy goes beyond just its immediate consequences.
Right.
It raises some crucial questions about the nature of diplomacy, the role of ideology in international relations, and the ethical implications of agreements that are made in the pursuit of power.
You touched on realpolitik earlier. Could you elaborate on how the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact exemplifies this concept?
Certainly. Realpolitik, at its core, prioritizes national self-interest and security above all else, often sidelining ideological considerations or moral principles. It's about pragmatism, about making decisions based on what is perceived to be in a nation's best interest at that moment, even if those decisions involve aligning with unlikely partners or making compromises that might seem morally questionable.
So how did realpolitik play out in the context of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact?
Both Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, despite their diametrically opposed ideologies, fascism and communism, found common ground in their desire to expand their power and influence.
Right.
Hitler saw the pact as a way to secure his eastern border and gain access to resources that would fuel his expansionist ambitions in Western Europe. Stalin, on the other hand, sought to buy time to strengthen the Soviet military and reclaim territories that he believed historically belonged to Russia.
It was a marriage of convenience, a strategic alliance driven by mutual self-interest rather than any genuine ideological affinity.
Precisely. They were willing to set aside their profound ideological differences and enter into a pact that served their immediate strategic objectives. It's a chilling reminder that in the realm of international relations, shared interests can sometimes trump even the most fundamental ideological divides.
But this pact, built on a foundation of opportunism and mistrust, was inherently unstable. How did this instability eventually contribute to the pact's collapse?
Well, the pact was never intended to be a long-term partnership. Both Hitler and Stalin had expansionist ambitions that ultimately clashed. Hitler always viewed the Soviet Union as a target for conquest, believing in the superiority of the Aryan race and the need for Lebensraum, or living space, in the East.
Right.
Stalin, while wary of Hitler's intentions, believed he could outmaneuver him and secure Soviet interests.
So the seeds of the pact's destruction were sown from the very beginning.
Yes. The ideological incompatibility between the two regimes, coupled with their conflicting expansionist goals, made a lasting alliance impossible. The Non-Aggression Pact was merely a tactical maneuver, a temporary truce that allowed both sides to prepare for the inevitable confrontation.
And that confrontation came in June 1941 when Hitler broke the pact and launched a surprise attack on the Soviet Union, marking the beginning of a brutal war on the Eastern Front.
That's right, the invasion of the Soviet Union really exposed the pact's fragility. It was a stark reminder that agreements that are based solely on realpolitik without a foundation of trust or shared values are inherently precarious and susceptible to betrayal.
The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact offers a cautionary tale about the limits of realpolitik. It highlights the dangers of prioritizing short-term gains over long-term stability and ethical considerations.
Indeed. While realpolitik can be a useful framework for understanding international relations, it shouldn't be pursued at the expense of moral principles or long-term strategic thinking.
Right.
The pact's legacy underscores the need for a balance between pragmatism and principle, recognizing that decisions that are made in the pursuit of power can have unintended consequences that reverberate for generations.
Shifting gears a bit, let's delve deeper into the pact's impact on the lives of individuals and communities. You mentioned earlier the mass displacement and political repression that follow the pact's implementation. Can you elaborate on the human cost of this agreement?
The human cost of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is immeasurable. The redrawing of borders, the forced migrations, the political purges, the systematic oppression, all of these actions had a devastating impact on millions of people across Eastern Europe.
Families were torn apart, communities were shattered, and entire populations were subjected to the brutality of totalitarian regimes. Can you give us a sense of what life was like for those caught in the crossfire of this agreement?
Imagine being a Polish family living in the eastern part of the country when the Soviet Union invades. Overnight, you become a citizen of a foreign power. Your property is confiscated, your freedoms are curtailed, and you're subject to the whims of a totalitarian regime. You might be deported to Siberia, forced to work in labor camps, or simply disappear, a victim of the secret police.
A similar fate awaited many living in the Baltic states.
Absolutely. The annexation of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania into the Soviet Union brought about a wave of repression and Sovietization. Those who resisted the new regime were imprisoned, deported, or executed. National identities were suppressed, cultural institutions were dismantled, and the region was integrated into the Soviet economic and political system.
The pact's legacy is one of trauma, displacement, and the suppression of national identities.
That's a crucial point. The trauma inflicted by the pact and its aftermath continues to shape the collective memory of Eastern Europe.
Right.
It's a reminder of the fragility of peace and the enduring human cost of political decisions made in the pursuit of power.
The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact wasn't just a historical event, it was a human tragedy.
Precisely. Understanding the pact's impact on the lives of individuals and communities helps us appreciate the full scope of its consequences and the need to prevent such tragedies from occurring again.
Moving beyond the immediate consequences, how did the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact cast a long shadow over the post-war world?
The pact had profound and lasting effects on the geopolitical landscape of Europe.
Right.
It contributed to the rise of the Soviet Union as a superpower, fueled the Cold War rivalry, and shaped the political and social development of Eastern Europe for decades.
Let's start with the Soviet Union's emergence as a superpower. How did the pact contribute to this development?
The pact, while ultimately broken by Hitler's invasion, provided Stalin with a crucial window of opportunity to strengthen the Soviet military and expand Soviet territory. The territorial gains in eastern Poland and the Baltic states, along with the weakening of Germany during the war, enabled the Soviet Union to emerge from World War II as a major power, rivaling the United States for global influence.
The pact also played a significant role in the origins of the Cold War.
Absolutely. The revelation of the secret protocol, which came to light after the war, deeply shocked and angered Western powers. It confirmed their suspicions about Stalin's expansionist ambitions and his willingness to make deals with a regime as abhorrent as Nazi Germany.
This mistrust, coupled with the ideological divide between the Soviet Union and the West, contributed to the decades-long geopolitical rivalry that came to define the Cold War era.
Yes, the pact became a symbol of Soviet duplicity and aggression in the eyes of the West. It fueled a climate of suspicion and hostility that permeated international relations for decades. It reinforced the perception of the Soviet Union as an expansionist power that was bent on spreading communism. a perception that shaped Western foreign policy and led to the formation of military alliances like NATO.
So the pact's legacy extended far beyond the immediate post-war period.
It had a lasting impact on the global balance of power and contributed to the ideological and geopolitical tensions that shaped the latter half of the 20th century.
The pact's impact on Eastern Europe was particularly profound.
That's right. The imposition of communist regimes across Eastern Europe, facilitated in part by the Soviet Union's territorial gains and influence after the war, had a dramatic impact on the political, social, and economic development of the region.
These countries experienced decades of Soviet domination, with limited sovereignty, suppressed dissent, and centrally planned economies. The legacy of this period continues and influences the political and social landscape of Eastern Europe today.
Indeed. The legacy of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact continues to be felt in the region as these countries grapple with the challenges of transitioning to democracy, addressing past injustices, and forging their own paths in a post-Cold War world.
We've discussed the pact's geopolitical ramifications and its devastating human cost. What broader lessons can we draw from this episode in history? What can the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact teach us about the nature of diplomacy and international relations?
The pact serves as a stark reminder that diplomatic agreements, even those presented as instruments of peace, can mask ulterior motives and have unintended consequences. The secret protocol hidden from public view fundamentally altered the balance of power in Eastern Europe and set the stage for conflict.
It highlights the importance of transparency in international relations.
Yeah.
Secret agreements conducted behind closed doors and without public scrutiny undermine trust and can have destabilizing effects on the international system.
Transparency is crucial for building and maintaining trust between nations.
Right.
When agreements are made in secret, it creates an atmosphere of suspicion and can lead to miscalculations and escalations of tensions.
The pact also underscores the dangers of alliances that are built solely on expediency and self-interest. The partnership between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, two ideologically opposed regimes, was ultimately doomed by their inherent mistrust and conflicting ambitions.
Alliances forged solely on the basis of realpolitik, without a foundation of shared values or a commitment to mutual respect, are inherently fragile.
Right.
They're susceptible to shifts in power dynamics and are easily broken when strategic interests diverge.
The pact's collapse and the subsequent invasion of the Soviet Union demonstrate that short-term gains achieved through such alliances can come at a high price.
The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact offers a cautionary tale about the perils of prioritizing short-term gains over long-term stability and ethical considerations in international relations. It reminds us that decisions made in the pursuit of power can have unintended and far-reaching consequences.
The pact also provides valuable insights into the complex interplay between ideology and national interest in shaping foreign policy.
Ideology can both motivate and constrain foreign policy decisions. In the case of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, both Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union were driven by their own distinct ideologies, fascism and communism, but they were also willing to set aside those ideological differences in pursuit of their respective national interests.
It demonstrates that ideology is not always the primary driver of foreign policy.
Yeah.
National interest, particularly when it comes to security and power, can often override ideological considerations.
However, ideology can also serve as a powerful constraint on foreign policy. The ideological divide between the Soviet Union and the West, exacerbated by the revelation of the Pact's secret protocol, contributed to the deep mistrust and hostility that characterized the Cold War.
So the relationship between ideology and national interest in shaping foreign policy is complex and multifaceted.
It's important to analyze foreign policy decisions through multiple lenses, considering both the ideological motivations and the pragmatic calculations of national interest that may be at play.
Beyond these broader lessons, what are the specific implications of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact for the contemporary world?
The pact serves as a reminder that history can repeat itself if we fail to learn from the mistakes of the past. The dangers of secret diplomacy, the fragility of alliances based on expediency, and the potential for unchecked ambition to lead to conflict. These are all lessons that remain relevant in the 21st century.
We live in a world where geopolitical tensions are rising and authoritarianism is on the rise. The Pact's legacy should serve as a warning against the dangers of complacency and the importance of upholding democratic values and international norms.
The pact underscores the need for strong international institutions, a robust system of international law, and a commitment to diplomacy and dialogue as the primary means of resolving disputes. It highlights the importance of transparency and accountability in international relations as safeguards against the kind of backroom deals and power politics that led to the tragedy of World War II.
Ultimately, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact reminds us that peace is not a given.
Right.
It is something that must be constantly nurtured and protected through vigilance, cooperation, and a commitment to upholding the principles of justice and human dignity.
By studying history, by understanding the mistakes and miscalculations of the past, we can equip ourselves to make more informed decisions in the present and work towards a future where such tragedies are not repeated.
The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact stands as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the importance of striving for a world where diplomacy, cooperation, and respect for international law prevail.
It's a lesson we must never forget.
And on that note, that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.